Good morning, and welcome to another edition of To The Point. It is Thursday, January 16th, 2020. Usually during the week, we host representatives of the National Democratic Congress on Tuesdays, but this week they were gracious enough to lend us their spot for a group that was visiting for just one day, and they've agreed to come on today. And this morning, I have the political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Mrs. Franca Alexis Bernardine, in studio with me. Good morning, Mrs. Bernardine.
Good morning, Blossom.
How are you?
Good.
I like that. Good
shape, yes.
Well, Happy New Year. This is the first time seeing you for the year.
Indeed.
Happy
Thank
New Year.
you so much, and many happy returns.
Thank you very much.
Many good things happen for you and your family, and indeed for all of us.
Thank you very much. From your mouth to God's ears. Amen. Well, let's get it started. This is the first time also interviewing you since your election as political leader of the NDC. So let's start with the basics. Your tenure in politics, your election as political leader, your expectations in the seat, as well as being the caretaker for St. George South East, I believe it is. So just give us a little background for the people who are living on the rocks and do not know the details.
That's a tall order there you put for me, Blossom. But we try and see how much of it we can get through, you know. And indeed, I just want to say a warm greetings and Happy New Year to all the listeners out there. Of course, our NDC listeners, our Grenadians generally, young and old, youth, elderly, whoever. Just wishing everyone from the NDC a warm New Year's greetings, and may many good things happen for all of us this year. And we're certainly geared up and ready to flow with respect to making things happen for our beloved Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Very briefly, I will spend a minute or two, maybe about 5 minutes, on myself and who I am, and a bit on that perspective, because I know that some people are still unfamiliar, although I have been Minister of Education in this country for 5 years and a Senator indeed for 10 years. But leadership of a political party is another dimension, and I am deeply honored to be in this position and would certainly give it the 100% of my thrust. So that's where that is. But I attended St. Joseph's Convent from age 5 to age 18. Would you believe in those days there was a primary school, a preschool, a primary school, and a secondary, and then we went straight on to
teaching me something this morning.
Yes.
I never knew that,
yes.
And I'm a past student. I never knew that.
Yes,
Quiet.
that's correct. That's correct. And so on my graduation,
learn something new every day.
On my graduation certificate, it says 13 and a half years at St. Joseph's Convent, from pre-primary right up. And so I'm certainly a product of there, and very proudly I'm hailing all the St. Joseph's Convent past pupils, yes, and so on. While there, I was very involved at school, very involved, and did a number of activities. I was a Queen's Guide. A Queen's Guide is part of the guiding process in which you get first your badges for second class, then badges for first class, and then you go on to Queen's Guide after that, and involves a number of skills and so on, very specific skills. And so I was honored with that. We have a few in Grenada, and that's where that was. Then, of course, I was a national netball player, 1969. Actually, it was the same year I went away. So, although getting selected on, I only had time for one international series, because I went off to UWI shortly after that. And the captain at the time was Irva Williams from Paddock, of course, Dr. Irva Williams. Mm-hmm. And there was a coach, an English coach, I remember, called Joe Wigman, and who in fact came down to assist the select the team and so on. But saying that to say, on the St. Joseph's Convent team, and certainly at that level of interaction, which I continued at university. But also too, I took over as a senior soloist from Miss Ramdani. I'm happy to say, and learned to sing under the sisters, the good sisters of St. Joseph's Convent, and was part of the Legion of Mary, part of the Children of Mary, all the different groups. I loved being involved from very early, and of course we set up the first student council, and I was its first president. So that was how that part of my life went. And I'm happy to say, and very proud to say, that at the end of that, at my graduation, I was selected as La Rosière, which in those days meant the student who best represented the ideals of St. Joseph's Convent. Very proud indeed. And so that was my career at SJC.
Well,
I
nice.
loved it and looked after it, yes. And then, of course, I went on to UWI, where I pursued a bachelor's degree in chemistry, zoology, botany, and went on to do a master's and 3 years of a PhD program while I did some lecturing at Cave Hill campus. So that was my career path. I should say alongside this, I had my children. In fact, my first child was born the first year of the bachelor's degree. I have 5 children and led a very active life, still do. And that was how that went. But amongst my professional achievements, I am particularly proud of the fact that I was a member of the executive board of UNESCO in Paris. And I'm the first Grenadian to sit on that board and to be nominated to that board. I understand that, well, Grenada just didn't bother before, but we bothered in the NDC to put it forward because I was Minister of Education at the time. And so I got 4 years blossom of an international feel for an executive body like that, and saw how decisions are made in education and the pathways that we move and how things happen. So it gave me a good international feel. And I also am very proud of the fact that I worked with the ministry when I came back. And it was in the capacity of an advisor in science and technology to the government. That was the one in 1979. I was written overseas and told if I'd like to come back to be part of, and I accepted and came back.
Okay.
So I also coordinated OAS projects. And then looked around and got involved in NULO because I felt that was where the tire met the road. There were people struggling here in education for a second chance. Great project. And spent 5 years there, and then developed the program for adolescent mothers, which really gave me a feel on the ground for the struggle of the women at that level. And indeed, being a mother myself, I had quite a clear picture of the challenges of studying as well as, qualifying oneself. So in a nutshell, really, that is a sort of background, which I know you've asked and people have spoken of. About me, I'm a good listener. I am a very firm leader. Fairness is important to me. What's done for Peter is done for Paul. They know me for that at the ministry. There's no favoritism that way. It's, who qualifies and who deserves. Then we must try to look at it objectively like that. Of course, there are always mitigating circumstances too. A child from a family of 12, for example, or 10, looking for a scholarship, and you look at the realities of what are their chances to get out. But it certainly is not partisan politics determining that, and that's very clear in my mind. I believe in encouraging ideas and participation, particularly from the young people, great thinkers. And they will come up with the most amazing solutions to issues and problems and so on. But need the support and the guidance and the experience of the older people in the society who have walked the road before and are therefore very knowledgeable and say, well, look, that isn't going to work. For example, I remember an issue of holding meetings on Sundays came up. So I said, you can't hold meetings on Sundays in Grenada. Sundays are for people to go to church, and they're not going to compromise from that. And I remember attempts being made to hold little community meetings on Sunday morning. Nobody showed up. So when they came back and said this, I said, well, this is, it's understanding the culture of our people and how we think. Sunday's a day of worship and a day of rest. We don't go to workshops on Sundays.
Right.
So these are all important little, pathways and so on, but that's where the older heads can guide the younger enthusiasm. But the young people will find the solutions. They will.
Sure.
You have to let them loose and let them create, even solving their own job issues and so on, I believe very much in Team Blossom. It's togetherness and growth of community and doing things considerate of each other. The NDC has its slogan, as you know, putting people first. I love it. Because people are what make things happen. Buildings don't make things happen. You understand? And therefore, to empower people, they will think out how to get the buildings and how to move from there. But it's about people believing in themselves and working together to make things happen. Looking at the issues, looking at the problems. So people's participation is very key in my mind. And that sort of underlined my whole reason for getting out there shortly after my election and getting into the communities. I've finished 5 so far. I'm really pleased about it. It's now just over 9 weeks. And just getting in, listening to people, seeing where they're at, seeing what they see as a critical issue for Grenada, and allowing us, therefore, to include that in all the planning. So we're looking at a new vision.
How did you get involved in politics? You mentioned you got your degrees in zoology, but
chemistry and zoology.
Chemistry and so on. How did you get involved in politics?
You know, if I may say, just before I answer that, recently, last year, I was in California at the University of San Diego. I was holidaying there with one of my children, who was in fact having her first child, she and her husband. And I got a request to talk, would you believe it, to talk on, if I would give a series, even 1 or 2, on science and politics, since I occupied what they thought to be a very unique position.
Right.
But true, I thought it was a lovely opportunity, you know, because I could look back on my whole Grenada experience and talk about how did we get from one to the other and how closely related all of this is.
Okay.
But so that is how that went. But it is, interestingly enough, Blossom, a journey in that came from need. I looked around and said to myself, this here, this education system needs to be along this line. It needs to be aligned to the job market, needs to be aligned to the people. It is focused on getting through 7, 8, 9 CXC subjects instead of the realities of what people are experiencing, the appropriateness of the education system. And did a couple of talks and so on it. And then I said, well, you know, it's not going to change unless you get involved, because each of us needs to be involved. This cannot continue this way. It's about 15 years I'm watching it. And that's really how I then thought to myself, maybe I could make a contribution. But a number of people like Margaret Francis, God rest her soul, Margaret Payne, and others said, Franca, you really have to get involved. This is really something up your street. You're good with people from school days. You really need to be involved. And I looked at it carefully, and then eventually I said, well, all right, if there's a spot that I can help in, I certainly would. And they came back with the victory of 2008. I got a call saying, would you come in and be part of it? I said, I certainly would. And then the Prime Minister, well, they told me the then Prime Minister, who had just been sworn in, Tillman Thomas, would pass by my home the Saturday. I remember saying to my husband, well, now this looks interesting. And he, you know, an emissary came before him, who told me this was going to happen and so on, and what they had in mind was the Minister of Education and had come highly recommended for it and so on. Right. And so I was glad for the opportunity to serve and get certain basic things done. And that's how I got involved. So directly into the politics. I mean, prior to that, of course, you're a member of the voting public. And,
right.
You know, we vote as a family block and so on. And that's how that happened. And from there, it was a tremendously fulfilling job in many ways, because I found many, many qualified persons. Indeed, Grenada's education team was more qualified than any of the others I had worked with, and I had spent some time in the Bahamas, Jamaica, and Barbados. I've worked in those 3 systems. But everybody, every second person was qualified in their own field of competence, you know, whether it is curriculum development, early childhood education, but not empowered at all. Clearly, they had been dictated to, never allowed to think. Right. So that their own talents and skills and ability to maneuver and make things happen wasn't there at all. You know, it was totally suppressed as far as I was concerned, so that it meant empowering them. You are the curriculum developers. I need a curriculum that incorporates skills into academics as well as personal development. Can you put that together? And then good a little rubbing and so on over the period of a week. Within 2.5 to 3 weeks, beautifully laid out curriculum. Same with the early childhood. They were going into what we call the high scope curriculum, which is a very hands-on approach that the UN had said with respect to training little children. And so, in the day nursery, they must be more involved. They must be stimulated from early and so on. All they needed really was the support and the commitment, following them up and so on. Same with the teachers. This is what we're trying to do, produce people to build a nation. So, and this is what I need you to do. So get your qualifications and we'll help you and learn how to teach. Teaching is a highly skilled profession. That's why I don't fool around with teachers at all. We need them if we are going to build a nation. And this has been the thrust of the National Democratic Congress. We understand you're not going anywhere unless you build an education, my friend. You're spinning top in mud. So
you were one of the champions for the implementation of the CPEA.
Yes.
I remember there being a little bit of resistance.
Yes.
When the thought just came up and the idea just came about. Some years later, your thoughts on how it has developed and grown and the stage that it's at now in 2020.
Yes, indeed. The whole motive behind it was to allow. We were losing too many children at that stage for all sorts of reasons that had nothing to do with their potential or ability. Some children blossom later than others. But if your blossoming was at 13 and we stood in a common entrance at 11, you got weeded out at 11, which did not make much sense at all. Too many people were being lost in the system, and that was the motive for changing it. Because at that, with the CPEE, it's a 2-year assessment. It's not an assessment that you prepare for one grand exam. And if this morning you get up with bad stomach or issues, you had no breakfast, whatever, you're not going to, you just didn't sit the exam, out the door, and the rest continues. That cannot be a system in place for a developing country. We can't afford that. Everybody has to be given a chance. Everybody. So with the CPEA now, where there is a continuous assessment for 2 years, it allows a much fairer chance for the child. And that is what we're looking at and looking at the statistics over the years to see. You see? Because that should now improve people's chances because you want everyone moving into the secondary.
Right.
We got a lot of small pockets of very clear resistance about not everybody has the ability. You see, in a developing country, you find the ability of the person. Whatever the skilled area is, we must be prepared.
To develop it.
Absolutely. If the stuff is in the school, the children will come to school and they will also learn the stuff. Whether they're musicians, whether they are carpenters, whatever, the education system must be adapted in such a way that they all have a chance. And so CPE was a big move, but we negotiated it with one of the first islands, really, with CXC, and heavily supported by people like Professor Cardinal Ward. It would be thrilling to know that he's out there hearing this. He is Professor of Electronics at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, head of department. Can you imagine? 11 patents to his name. He is a Barbadian, very supportive of science and technology in the Caribbean. We got along very well because he understood and he said to me, it is such a powerful move because it will afford so much more opportunity for our people. So that was the CPE history. I don't, of course, have access to be able to analyze.
Right.
I will see that when we get back in. But it would be interesting to see how it went and the impact on how many children, and we must try to keep it that way. It's not about screening out. It's about spotting the trouble areas for the children, whether it's reading or
math.
Yes, or math
right.
or whatever, strengthening them because that's what it's based about. You pull the child out, you give a little extra tutoring and support, and then you flow back into the main system in time to sit whatever final exams which carry a portion of the final result, you know?
Right.
So I hope that is far more effective than... We must grow with times on the common entrance.
Right.
So I hope that... I'm sorry I can't even give any more analysis because I have no access to the data.
Nope, understood.
But I expect that it would have gone down well. Yes, it is the way forward, and that's why CXC put it in and so on.
Okay. Let's take a quick break and come back inside. We're speaking with political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Franca Alexis Bernardine. We're going to take a quick break and come back inside. This is To The Point.
That's not how you cross the pedestrian crossing.
Really? One day I just woke up and I saw pedestrian crosswalks on the road. No one really showed me how to use them properly.
Well, this is how it's done. You never cross before doing these things. They might save your life. First, when you get to the crosswalk, you stop. You look left, you look right. If there's a vehicle coming, you put your hand out, making eye contact with the driver, indicating that you want to cross. And only when the vehicle comes to a complete stop, you quickly cross to the other side.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact. Wait for pedestrian to cross to the other side, then you happily continue on your journey. This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
Going beyond the ordinary. Examining the stories beyond what meets the eyes. GBN gets to the meat of the matter. Join us on GBN Television, Classic Radio, gbn.gd, or on Facebook via your smartphones and other devices. We take you beyond the headlines every Monday night at 8:30 p.m. We are GBN, rated number 1.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Franca Alexis Bernardine. Mrs. Bernardine, speaking of your election as political leader, following your election to the post, I know you've been around to various communities and so on over the past few weeks. How has that process gone? And tell me your plans as political leader of the NDC.
Yes. Well, it has been an eye-opener, as seasoned as I think I might be. Visiting each constituency has emphasized the fact that different constituencies have different issues. I started first with St. Mark's Victoria because I felt they perhaps needed the most support, and met with, political bodies like polling division captains and so on, but went to one or two homes and just listened to the stories and to the things that people said and what were their concerns and what was and was not happening. And I'll tell you, Blossom, one of the things that really rattled me was the fact that there were people there who thought that the $50 handout that they get on a Saturday was really like working. That was the salary. $50 for 4 weeks, okay? It's speaking to one or two of the people. And what came across to me was it was a sense of almost hopelessness that, well, I can't do better. This is the best that I could get. And I had to say, how do we get people to understand you deserve far more than that? You deserve a hospital that functions when you get ill. You deserve proper education systems for your children. These are things nobody's doing you a favor. We as an island together must find ways to do this. It was really quite painful to see, and I remember calling up 1 or 2 young people in the States the same evening and saying, you've got to find people from this part of Grenada to help to empower and make them feel better about themselves, particularly the women. What I did say to them was, my friend, I'm hoping that even if you can't see a better future, try and get the children to school at all costs. Try and make sure the children at least get the education, because that will empower and take you to the next level, you know. But that I found a little in Grenada in this day and age. There's still people with that sense of complacency and hopelessness. I wonder, why is it we don't get empowered to move on, to try, to agitate for, but I seem to be so content with sitting down. I didn't feel they were content, the 1 or 2 I spoke with, but I felt they found resigned. There wasn't much else that they could do. Surely part of the responsibility of a government and of an MP is to empower your people to strive forward and to get more. It's not about paying people money. It's about helping people to better themselves. And it's a very clear division. But we are going to have to bring about that change in our people. You know, it leads on to so much more story and talk, Blossom. And I look at the fact that we have to find a way to change a whole new dispensation. I often wonder in my thinking now about our Caribbean politicians. And indeed, haven't they seriously let us down? Politics has become a matter of who can win votes. You really seem to have emerged as only important because you're a vote. And therefore, I look to help you. Grenada has to work for everybody. We must make this island work for all. Everybody must be able to find a little way. We're not all gifted the same way. Some will make it well ahead, and others will. But the point about it is that the opportunity must be there for all to advance. And when you look at that sort of thinking and the lack of empowerment of people, and, you know, complacency to sit and say, well, nothing better can happen, that can't be the way at all, you know. So we're looking for a whole change in focus there, whole change in focus, and understanding that in many ways some of our Caribbean politicians have really brought the politics to the level where it's about who you support and what happens. It's not about people development at all. And I think that has contributed to our being so far behind. Let there be no uncertainty in your mind. We are well behind. Our CARICOM leaders are looking different islands or at different stages, but we ain't featuring all up at the top at all. When you look at countries like Singapore, for example, and you see that Singapore is now the number 1 in terms of economy, development, all aspects of things, you know, the criteria used to evaluate it. And all we down in the 176th of nations, of 192 nations, we're all the way down the road. You know, so it could be done, but we have not empowered our people. And you know, what makes it even worse in my mind, Blossom, is that recently, only in the last 2 weeks, I realized, and it was brought to my realization, that Singapore, with all its successes, was developed off the policy and plan of Dr. You know our $100 bill? Let me make it more relevant. Mm-hmm. You see the head on it?
Right.
Dr. Lewis?
The glasses man, as they call him.
The glasses man, as they call him. This is the man that designed the plan. You know, apparently he was at university with the President of Singapore. And they left university together. He came out and said, I'm going home to implement this plan. So the plan to develop Singapore has originated right there with Dr. Lewis, to whom I understand there's a big bust at Manchester University, and to him and his developmental plans and so on, right in the Caribbean. So we let the idea leave us here and go all the way there and become number 1, and we still fighting between ourselves how to move from 176th up to 160, and this is where we're at. I mean, what is this? If you think about it, it couldn't be better on your plate. A St. Lucian has outlined for you the steps and how to get there. Somebody from a totally different part of the world takes it and becomes the number one, and you're still in the bottom of the line fighting. You see, but when you look at what our politicians have put forward, it is about getting me power. Anything to make sure you vote for me. You know, so many of our team players at the cabinet level do not have the skills. They know how to win an election, but having gotten in, they don't know how to deliver. You see, they can't even manage the two secretaries in the office, let alone managing a ministry of 150 or 180 people. And as a result, the nation suffers. So instead of getting to where we ought to be, we are well behind where we should be. You know?
One of the comments coming since your election as political leader has been, as it stands now, you'll be going up, the next election you'll be going up against a giant in the political game. Dr. Mitchell has won, 5 elections as Prime Minister?
Yes.
And you are going up against somebody who is a veteran in the business. How are you prepared to face what many term to be a tall order?
Well, it depends totally and completely on how you look at it. I reject completely the concept that people must vote for people. You understand? Because I like the man or I like the lady. It's how to get our people to understand there is more evaluation to that. You understand? You can no longer afford to like the man or like and vote for them without the rest of the package. The rest of the package to deliver must be there. Giants never bothered me. I grew as one myself. So I am not in any way, intimidated or otherwise. That is quite... Life and development has a whole process, growth process. And people come to realizations at different stages in their own development. And I think we are at a crossroads and a junction where we understand we got to go another way to get where we're going. We cannot continue with a hospital this way, with an agricultural program that does not accomplish a little drop of us, 100,000 of us. And we having all this trouble to get one hospital organized, to get one program organized that could feed us and export, to get an education system that becomes appropriate. Each time it's laid down, the politicians come in and disrupt it and put it another way. And the answer is that we like the person. You understand? But those criteria, if you look at islands like Barbados, you will see that they don't vote on who they like, meaning to say they like this gentleman over here. They're in a nice man. They could flow with him anyway. But Mia Mottley is going to give them what they want. And as a result, Mia Mottley sits there. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a long quest. But it's a quest that has to be done, and I am very hopeful. There's a good portion of the population, a good 40%, as you know, 41%, that see very clearly development as the NDC puts it forward with good governance principles and the way it should be, law and order proceeding, not this lawlessness we see in all over the island and so on. We'll comment on that further on. But yes, that should pervade. We knew a Grenada that really ticked and functioned well. Grenada was the mecca of the small islands, the Windward Islands, when we were little and growing up. Now have a look at us, trailing behind to see if we could keep up with a few CXCs, and it's really incomprehensible. We're looking for that old vision of Grenada, where we could get there, get back to where we are, be on top of the technology, get the critical programs going like the agriculture, the health, the education, and then try to let it benefit all across the board. It's not for some, it's for everybody.
Let's go to the phone lines, 435-2041. Let me implore our callers that there would be a lot of callers calling into the program. So if you can keep our comments, questions, concerns to, I usually give 3 minutes, let's say 2.5 minutes, as short as possible. And Mrs. Bernadine will keep her answers as short as possible so we can get as much questions as possible. We have our first phone call of the program. Good morning.
Sister Blossom.
Good morning, Ms. Jacob.
How are you?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm fine. And good morning to my dear sister on the other side of you. What is her name again?
Franca Alexis Bernadine.
Franca Alexis Bernadine. How are you?
Good.
You good?
Good, thank you.
Well, I'm good too. Well, I have a question for you, Sister Bernadine. You said when the NDC come in power, you're all going to do what and what all you have. But are you do send in those senior citizen home? Are you do come in and take out the senior citizen water? Because I is one that all your NDC, you was in the group too, that come to take out my water. And then my beautiful, handsome brotherlet come and speak to you all. And I will never give him nothing again. But my dear sister, I love you still. And brother, what is his name again? Tillman Thomas, darling, I love you, baby. Goodbye, Sister Bernadine.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you very much for your comments. And let me see if it is any consolation, Mrs. Jacobs, that senior citizens are absolutely important and critical to our continued growth and development. We are standing where we are today because of the labor and the efforts of our senior citizens. We are trying to build on what you put down there. Suffice it to say that is our overall policy, and whatever it takes, we will be willing to listen and adjust accordingly to put the necessary support, to ensure that we make things as comfortable as possible for our senior citizens.
A question on the WhatsApp. Good morning. Rumors have it that the political leader is planning to come St. George Northeast. Is there any truth to this?
Is planning to come? No.
As in maybe, I'm not sure if it's to run in St. George Northeast or maybe to visit the constituency.
Yes.
But it says come. So any plans for either one?
Yes, certainly. The visit, we have a schedule of visits. I have it here. It's going to be ratified today at the National Executive meeting. And Northeast is scheduled for somewhere in March. Look at it here. Second week in March, as one of the last two. No, I am not aware of any changes to be made in terms of running anywhere else or for anybody at this point in time. And we are about to put together our shadow cabinet and also our caretakers. I mean, nobody knows if somebody may die, heaven forbid, whatever happens. So there may be adjustments to that. But at this point in time, absolutely not. There is no plan to take over any such or be,
Okay. Back to the phone lines. Good morning.
Good morning, and how are you?
Not too bad.
Miss Alexis, can I speak? I just want to say good morning to Mrs. Franca Bernadine.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. Warm morning greetings on this wonderful morning in Grenada.
You know who is that? Miss Bernadine? Hello?
I'm listening carefully.
This is Catherine Francis, who used to work with Miss Alexis. You remember Catherine?
Catherine, how are you doing? Your voice sounded a little muffled there. I hope you are having a good day, my dear.
I think that was a pain, but I listened to the program, and I just want to say good morning to you. And when you go home, tell Mrs. Alexis, Miss Catherine, say good morning.
Oh, she would love that. I hope she's listening.
Yes, thank you very much. Bye.
Tell her. Bye now, Catherine. You keep well. You're here as best as you can.
You're getting a lot of love. Wait, let's take this phone call before I ask the other question. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Bernadine.
Morning,
good morning
sir.
to you. Welcome. I hope that you're going to do good. I hope that you'll win your seat because I know you very well. You used to be a neighbor of mine one time. And I hope everything go good with you. And we need some changes because we have too much people that not working in some of the parties. So we need to change them and get young people to do the work now. So have a nice day and keep up the good work. Bye.
Yes, thank you very much for the advice. Duly noted. But again, it comes from encouraging the young people, There's somewhat a sense of hopelessness in so many of them. But they have to get up and still push ahead. We still have to make it. We can make it if we try.
A WhatsApp question. Trinidadians are calling for lie detector tests for politicians for the upcoming elections. Would you advocate for such for the next election in Grenada?
I would advocate for anything. We would advocate for anything that would make the system straighter and more honest and truthful. So, we have no control over whether it's brought in or not. None whatsoever. We don't even sit, as you know. We don't even have a seat in the opposition, and we are one of the few. There's nobody else in the Caribbean, and we're taking licks for it every day. But we understand why we are where we are. And our appeal, therefore, is to the public to think carefully, because there is going to be outmaneuvering again in terms of how the electoral process proceeds. Don't let us be naive. It was done before, and therefore it is likely to go that way. So certainly anything. Boy, I tell you, we may have some big failures in the lie detector test, because we have a way of saying things around here and not doing them at all. You know, we say that Grenada is for everybody, but the partisan politics are determining everything. You can't get a job, you can't even do public service, the appointment of nurses, the appointment of police officers to come into the system. Everything is governed by what party you support. And that is not acceptable at all. Not acceptable. I keep raising the issue all the time because I hope that at some stage it would dawn on someone. I don't think it would. This is what Caribbean politics has become. But we, the people, brought it there. You know, as very quite often, twice so far, I've heard the Prime Minister address my comments in that regard and say, Madam, I didn't put myself here. The people put me here. So when you give a carte blanche with a free blank check to run without any feedback, you see, this is, all systems go awry. It is a most unhealthy state of affairs. So yes, I would hope that lie detectors sound like a good thing to me, but I don't know. I'm afraid many people will get caught in the system, you know. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yes, it definitely would be interesting. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Sister Bernadine.
Morning, sir.
Congrats on assuming the leadership of the Congress Party. I certainly am a foundation member of the party, and so you go right ahead. The question was asked to you early on about the giant that you likely to go up against. I know you do remember the story of David and Goliath. The other thing I want to say to you is I picked up this someplace. One political leader once remarked, some people see things as they are and say, why? But he said, I look at things that are not and say, why not? I trust that is going to be your quest as you go forward. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. That's a lovely quotation, sir, and very motivating indeed. You know, along that particular issue again, let me say very clearly, I have a book here with me. I walk with it. There are one or two that I walk with. This is it here, and it is a history book that your children at school use. It's written by a gentleman, a Dominican, called Lennox Honeychurch, who is in fact an anthropologist. An anthropologist studies mankind and man and his journey over the years and over the centuries and so on, you know? And he's one of the few, he's an Oxford graduate, top recognized in the world, and puts forward the most amazing understandings of Caribbean people. This gentleman here is called upon to speak ever so often, and I happen to be there. My previous employers, where I worked with the U.S. government before in Peace Corps, always brought him in to speak to their people because he understood so profoundly what Caribbean people were about and Grenadians. He visited here, and I happened to be sitting again in the audience. And they asked him, where do you think you would be, Grenada and the islands would be in 100 years? And he said, you're not going to like the response, but I am prepared to say it because that you ask me, I will tell you. You will be exactly where you are now. Exactly where you are. He says, the big yachts will come in. You will come trundling down from the top of the hill with your buckets and mops. Nothing wrong. There's dignity in all labor. Please understand. Clean up. And they will continue to refresh for another day of the while they cope with the stressful world that we are all living in. And then they will slip out and others would come in. You don't think it would be nice to have your child or people from your country own some of those and some of those businesses and so on. But we never put in place, I am adding this on now, the people to make that happen. That's why giants don't bother me at all. Okay? I think that whole era of politician who sought to use the same slave methods of divide and rule and one party saying everybody must think one way and so on, are on their way out to the Caribbean. I think it's only a matter of time. And so I urge the younger people to come forward and find new and innovative ways to create, so that in 100 years' time, we don't find ourselves in exactly the same position because we only favor in one set of people. Time to think more advanced than that. Time to move ahead, time to get busy, time to make it happen, because we have all the talent and ability.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Blossom and your followers, and good morning, Mrs. Bernadine.
Good morning, sir.
And Happy New Year to you, and good luck to you and your political organization for the year. It was interesting, the point you made about liking people and winning elections. You know, sometime last week I was listening to a discourse, and someone said, you know, in our part of the world, we tend to look at issues from administration to administration. But in their part of the world, they look at things from one generation to the next. In other words, they have a longer-term view of things. And many times, you know, we forget. And it's a matter of who will win and who will lose. And we don't think about what happened. The leaders today would pass on. They have to. Some of them are old. And, of course, they would have to give up. But we have to ask ourselves, what happens when they leave? What are they leaving behind for us? When they destroy every institution, the public service, every facet of governance is destroyed by them. The Public Service Commission, you just name it. After they have ravaged everything and they have gone on, what will they have left behind for the younger ones to work with? And this is the important question we have to ask ourselves. What are they leaving us with? What are they? It's not a matter of win or lose. Every time you have a discourse, people say, oh, never mind, we're winning still. It's not about winning or losing. It's a matter of what have they built and what are they destroying that we won't have to work with for the next generation. Have a wonderful day.
Couldn't have said it better, sir. And you put it absolutely where it is. The longer view is what we keep missing, and we have to appeal to our people to look at the reality before them. With all the changes that we keep getting bombarded with, the great economy in Grenada and how it has grown and how we have serviced, great to service the debt. But the growth of the economy, that is not filtering down to the people on the ground at all. At all. It is catering to a small group of persons who, in fact, are enjoying a good life. I don't want to confuse you. There are people here who are plush, enjoying it comfortably, but they're only about 10%. The rest of us are journeying along, trying to figure out how to make it from day to day. You know the reality that we speak of, and not seeing the longer-term view at all in the whole picture. We see in the tree, the peas tree, instead of seeing the whole farm and how many trees are dead on this side here and not surviving. I couldn't put it any better. You are perfectly right. And we must try. That's why it's time for action now. People who can put things into action. I think of some of our members in the NDC, you know, some of our caretakers who really are gifted in their fields. I look, for example, at the whole development of social development. And Sister Anne John, for example, who is a highly experienced person, spent 12 to 15 years in the United Kingdom understanding how to set up effective social systems, and came back here and worked as a manager of Children Action for Children, NCH Action for Children. And understand, she's not a counselor who came back home or a secretary who came home and was given the portfolio, a portfolio that she knows little about. She is well versed in it. And if I may say something, if, for example, she structured a social development program for you with the correct people being supported and sponsored and system, you will see how smoothly it will flick along without the kind of problems. But we never seem to utilize. Dr. George Vincent is another one. He is a regional expert in tourism, sitting down saying nothing in Guelph because he can't. The system doesn't allow him. But yet, he works with USAID. And they bring him in to consult on issues of Central American tourism in Costa Rica. Well, this is it. You planning for that, and we send in a secretary or whoever to represent us in tourism and to compete against regional giants like Van der Poel in the Bahamas. Ordinary gentleman. I know he's been here, but highly qualified, an Oxford graduate again, and who has lived and worked all over the world, Milano and so on, can bring back to his people what tourism, looking at the best of different combinations. We have an art of letting these people, not to talk about people like Ray Roberts and others who have so much to contribute, but we'd like the chance to be able to do so. And we don't talk sweet, you see, and then don't deliver. We are very much a people of delivery and making things happen. And I can only hope that people see just what this caller has said. Look at the bigger picture. You need a proper health facility and proper health systems, and you need a proper education system. You know, I'm sorry, is there another caller?
A question on the WhatsApp.
I see. Oh.
The one question says, can you pledge to hold a full investigation into Grenada Oil and Gas and the 2018 election when you get into power?
Well, I am so glad somebody raised it because absolutely. I mean, people speak about it all the time. Last election, the eve of the election, the big meeting in Pearls. And we were told we're on the brink of the big thing. The big thing had finally come to us. And no. I mean, the way it was presented, it sounded like virtually all of us could pick up a bucket and go and get oil and gas, man. It was that lucrative in its presentation. And then, it isn't mentioned once in the budget. You know, where is Grenada's oil and gas? This is what is carrying Guyana where it is now on its way to success and where it's going. There's a predicted enormous percentage increase in GDP for Guyana, and it's going to happen. Not a word about Grenada. That's why we're talking about the lie detector tests and what is going to pinpoint what for whom. I'm not saying that any lies told. I'm simply saying that we can't hide the truth of the matter at all and where it is, and we need to be told these things. We need to understand this is our country, and we are not getting the picture for whatever reason. You see? So we must continue to demand that and see very clearly what has happened. Thanks for that reminder with the oil and gas. Ooh.
Another question on the WhatsApp. We only have about 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
Part of the agreement with CSME is that by 2004, all teachers should at least have a first degree to be in the classroom. When you were Minister of Education, you used to tell teachers shape up or ship out. Now the government is saying the basic requirement to enter the teaching service is 4 or 5 CXC. What can you say to this?
Yeah, well, it's a clear plan. I don't need the writing is on the wall before you. Our policy was that if you try to get the degree, and we will pay for the first 2 years, you pay for the last year. Brothers and sisters, an education system cannot rise above the level of its teachers. Where its teachers are, that's where its children will be. That's their output level. So that's a clear policy in UNESCO. So to get your people empowered, you need to empower your teachers. You cannot have children in a system with more knowledge and brighter than their teachers. It can't work that way. You know, and it's not that the teachers are not bright. They need the knowledge. They need the information. That's why the book program was so critical. Because they need their qualifications and the children need to be... Knowledge is what you're looking for. So it cannot work any other how. And to come down with a big stick on the teachers is not a way to get them to do it at all. My statement was that if your teaching is not for you, you need to come out. And I'm more than happy to write the recommendation. I'll do so personally. Because it's not for you. If it is, accounting or whatever, please find your career type. But this is a commitment far beyond the level of even knowledge and empowering. Children learn so much from their teachers. Discipline, order, how to relate to other children, and so on. And the method of teaching. Children learn by all different styles. You need to find that style. You see? But you need to be trained how to do it, in addition to your in-depth knowledge on English or math or chemistry or whatever, on woodwork, on whatever it is. So it is absolutely critical that our teachers be empowered, and it pains me to hear that that is now the criteria. The reason for this is clear. The writing is on the wall. You can't have in mind, you're only saying you have in mind, an education system that functions. Do you know, Blossom, as the last point I wanted to quickly raise, that we brought in a special education desk, recognizing from a study that was done, and it was done by the U.S. Peace Corps volunteers, 8 of them in special education. And we realized a number of children that had special education needs. It means to say they have a deficit in some area in their learning capacity or in their learning techniques, whatever it was producing a deficit. It was necessary to put a desk there and have special education teachers trained. I am hearing less than a week ago that they no longer are a body existing at all. They have been put into the regular education system, although our government paid for degrees in special education. And the desk is a totally frustrated desk at the ministry. It's not even properly serviced, recognized, or otherwise. So you see, as we take decisions to move ahead and to get certain things in place, a government changes, and those decisions are all what will be back to square one. But you can't do it without that. You see? So it is regrettable. It's just like even teachers in civic awareness. We sent away so that children could learn and understand the importance of supporting your community, the whole politics and the issue of what happens at that level. Not one of them this country has paid for. In fact, we got a grant from the OAS to do it. And there are 20 of them. Not one is employed in teaching civic awareness. I mean, what is the curriculum that was put into place? Why is it not honored? So you're making spinning top in mud. And I ain't get to talk about health at all today. But
I would encourage you to return next week, please, Lord. Because I still have phone calls coming in and questions to ask. But unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Yes, we have.
Mrs. Bernadine, thank you so much.
Pleasure, Blossom.
Thank you,
and
as
let
always.
me urge everybody out there, get out and vote. Think well and vote. The time has come for a change in approach to politics and politicians. We cannot allow them to keep us back on our progress. So think, Grenadians, and let us build a country worthy of all of us, where everybody has a chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That will bring us to the end of To The Point today. Keep it locked to Classic and the GBN. Brenda is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. My name is Blossom, signing off for today. I'll be back bright and early tomorrow, God's willing. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Have a safe and productive day.